Good day, Miss. I am Cesare Barbas, and I am here again in front of you to tackle about the Part 8 to Part 10 of CM. So, first we're going to tackle the Part 8, which is Requirements on Sanitation and Food Safety for Domestic Inter-Island Vessels, Port or Airport Terminal, and Food Service Establishments. So let's going on to section 47, the sanitation and food safety. In this section, the Bureau shall take all necessary steps to ensure the maintenance of a sanitary environment within the domestic ports and airports, where sanitation is the creation and maintenance of conditions that will prevent food contamination on foodborne illness and lower levels of disease, causing microorganisms to a safe level. And these measures are in line with the provision of PD 856, otherwise known as the Sanitation Code of the Philippines, particularly Chapter 15, Port, Airport, Vessel, and Aircraft Sanitation. So it's all about sanitation and how to have and how the food will handle safety. So that's what section 7 tells about. So in subsection 47.2, sanitary facility requirements of inter-island vessels. So in 47.2.1, it provides adequate and proper storage of potable water about ship with sanitary safeguards from the shore water distribution system. In subsection 47.2.2, adopt the Good Manufacturing Practices or JMP for food safety and sanitation on board ship. In subsection 47.2.3, provide hand washing and toilet facilities and approved sewage disposal and drainage system. In subsection 47.2.4, provide adequate and safe accommodation facilities for crew and or passengers. In subsection 47.2.5, provide of sanitary storage and approved waste disposal system. In subsection 47.2.6, maintain pest and vermin control. So that's what the requirements of inter-island vessels. So in subsection 47.3, sanitation facility requirements of port terminals, catering points, and food service establishments. So in 47.3.1, comply with the local ordinances regarding the structural setup of the terminal in accordance with the National Building Code of the Philippines, PD 1096. So they had to comply with the local ordinances. In subsection 47.3.2, provide sanitation facility requirements of food handlers working in the terminal. In subsection 47.3.4, comply with the requirements of drinking water supply in accordance with the Philippines National Standards of Drinking Water, Waste, and Sewage Disposal, vermin abatement program in the building and premises. So that's what the requirements of sanitation facility of port terminals, catering points, and food service establishment. So section 48, food safety requirements. So this we can tap we will notice here on what are the requirements of having a food safety during the voyage. So in this section, it's all about the requirements to have a food safety. So I said that earlier. So, in subsection 48.1, enhance the provision of sanitation and food safety in the area responsibility at both domestic and international airports or ports of entry, including in-flight catering, food service establishment, vessels, and aircraft. In subsection 48.2, adopt the hazard analysis critical control points or HACCP audit system in monitoring the food system program implemented at the area of responsibility. In subsection 48.3, ensure mandatory compliance of the Good Manufacturing Practice or GMP or Hazard Analysis Critical Control Points or HACCP provision and guidance values as standards for the assessment of the sanitary and the quality of food served by the food service establishment and in-flight catering points at the points and airports of entry, both domestic and international. In subsection 48.4, comply with the physical or medical examination of stewards and food handlers for the issuance of health certificate. So that's what the requirements for having a food safety. So next is section 49, monitoring and evaluation. So here, this is what monitor happen and evaluation. So in section 49, in this section, the Bureau of Quarantine shall conduct a methodological examination and review of procedure and records of the program or system with a detailed report or findings. And next is the part 9, requirements for cargoes and materials for medical transplant and research. So here we can tackle about what are the requirements for cargoes and materials um, um, for any transplant, for medical or any kind of research happening in any cargoes. So in section 50, regulation on importation and exportation. So here it's all about the regulations on how the importation and exportation. So in subsection 50.1, cargoes that are considered to harbor vectors of infectious disease subject to the regulations emerging disease and or public health emergency of international concern. So here are the regulations. So in subsection 50.1.1, cargoes from plug-infected port that are vulnerable to harbor rats or flea shall be fumigated prior to its unloading in the port. Gunny sacks or jute bags or cargoes wrapped with the same materials coming from plug-infected countries shall be fumigated prior to the release to the consign unless covered by a valid fumigation certificate. In subsection 50.1.2, other cargoes that may carry vector-borne diseases and or cargoes potentially exposed to diseases subject to the regulations, emerging disease, and public health emergency of international concern of public health concern shall be subject to quarantine measures. In subsection 50.2, cargoes containing hazardous materials or radiological, biological, or chemical waste, and etc., are subject to stringent quarantine inspection and measures. In section 51, regulations on importation and exportation of materials for medical transplant and research. So in subsection 51.1, organs or tissues of human origin culture of bacteria or any live microbe or collection of organisms that may cause any disease to human or any insects, animal, or plants and its byproducts potentially capable of transmitting a disease to human shall not be admitted to be transported to or from the Philippines without a specific permit issued by the Director of Quarantine in accordance with concerned agencies such as veterinary, plant, fish, and wildlife quarantine. So when in that cases, so when the research findings there are such um, bacteria, the director of the quarantine have to have the permit in order for that import and exportation will happen. So they have to coordinate with the bureau, with the director of quarantine, in order for the safety of the crew and the passenger. So in subsection 51.2, organs, tissues, or specimens of human origin which are solely for medical or clinical research and non-infectious shall secure a quarantine permit or clearance prior to its admission or shipment. These shall be accompanied by necessary documents or protocols secured from the Bureau of Food and Drugs or BFAD. So um, the documents or protocols shall be secured by the BFAD. So in order for them to um, um, in order for them to have a secure quarantine, so the BFAD have to um, um, comply the documents. So next is the part 10, which is the clearance of human remains. So in section 52, regulations and clearance of human remains. So in this section, the admission of human remains into the country shall be governed by this following regulation. So here are the following regulations. So these are the following regulations on clearance of human remains. So in subsection 52.1.1, all human remains arriving at the Philippines ports and airports coming from foreign countries shall be accompanied by the following documents for quarantine clearance. So first is that certificate or a true copy thereof with prior translation certified by the appropriate authorities from the country of origin. So it is so that certificates are really required. Second, certification from the consul at the country of origin. So certification from where that um, um, human or dead body came from or where it is origin. So certificate of from the consul. So next is certification that there is no existence of pestilence from the health authority of the country of origin. Next is embalming certificate stating that the human remains have been properly embalmed and placed in hermetically sealed, so or airtight and waterproof proof casket. So embalming means pag-imbalsa mo sa lawas kung naabay certificate. So if there is certificate of embalming or embalsamo, so so that's what the requirements para makasud ang patay nga lawas or maka-travel. So next is cremation certificate stating that the human remains have been properly cremated at the ashes shall be placed in a hermetically sealed urn or a similar container. So when kanang so kung cremation na gani, so kailangan jud na ay certificate sa pag-cremate para ma kuha ni siya nga naka safety seal para di siya mausik. So that's so in subsection 52.1.2, death caused by a highly pathogenic organism, infectious disease, subject to the regulation emerging disease and or public health emergency of international concern, the remains may be issued quarantine clearance under the following conditions. The remains should be cremated before shipment in case of the grave public health threat posed by the disease. So the death body should be cremated first. For other cases that need to cremation, the casket should remain permanently sealed from the port of origin and burial must take place within 24 hours after issuance of clearance of admission into the country. So the cremation or the ashes where the ash putted, so it must be sealed. So next is 52.2. Human remains for transport to foreign or domestic port shall secure a quarantine permit before shipment with the following documents. 52 subsection 52.2.1 death certificate or a true copy thereof. So next is 52.2.2 embalming certificate stating that the human remains have been properly embalmed and placed in a hermetically sealed. Then in subsection 52.2.3 cremation certificate stating that the human remains have been properly cremated and the ashes shall be placed in a hermetically sealed urn or a similar container. So that's what the part 10 tells all about. Is all about the human remains where kanang og as kung asa ka namatay. So there is really needed nga there's a lot of requirements before ka makasud diri sa port of the Philippines or airport of the Philippines to have a safety country. So that's all, Miss. And thank you and God bless. Have a safety. Bye bye.